See that? And we're live. We should be live now. Hello, Dennis. Good to see you. Tesseract, good to see you too. We're live now on YouTube. We're live on the live. Good to see you all. Today we're here with Jaci, and we're going to be talking a bit about her work. And yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for coming. And it's a real pleasure to have you today. Oh, I have an echo. And it's a real pleasure to have you today. Do you have your stream?
There's an echo. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Did the echo get sorted out?
I think you have a stream on then.
I did, and I apologize. I've turned it off.
All right. Well, there
is it better now? Okay, it was me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. Good to see you, Aptri. Good to see you also, Michelle, and everybody that's here. So can you talk a bit about yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Jaci. I'm based in Dallas, and I work mostly now as a medium or a spiritual connection facilitator and teacher. I have in the past done energy work and also worked in an alternative wellness practice. Before that, I was in the corporate world.
Right.
So that's a short answer, but I'm happy to elaborate anywhere.
So you actually regained or got back your psychic abilities in full force. Can you talk about that, how that went and what happened?
Yeah, so they were always there, kind of a little bit. Maybe I would say they were very active when I was a child, and then I would say dormant for years. I would have like little things like dreams, or dreams was really the big one, where I would wake up and call my friend and say, like, I had a dream you had to pull over and put on chains on your tires because the weather was bad. And he was like, okay, well, he actually called me that day and said, I was going skiing, and as we got up the mountain, the snow hit and we got stuck. I should have had chains on my tires. So yeah, I would have things like that all the time, but not so much in my waking day to day. And then around 29 is when I fully felt like I was visited by other beings, and I consented to working with what I was really pushing down in those months leading up to. So it was building up at 29. It was becoming very apparent. Big life changes were happening for me. And then I had this episode where I left my corporate job and I walked over to the Chelsea Piers. I was working in New York City. And I sat down and I was so distraught, and I was crying actually. And I was like, I feel like I'm insane. And these beings were like, you're not insane. You're just not really in tune. And this is something that's real and it's time to do it. And I kind of said, like, I'm willing to do this, but I don't want to hurt anyone. I was afraid that something bad was going to come through, or or it wasn't real. I don't know. I just had all these fears at the time. And they were like, okay, that's our deal. We agree to that. If you follow us and you work with us. And I walked back to the office and told my boss I was leaving. I gave notice. I didn't just walk out, but I said, like, I have to go.
Wow.
And yeah.
Talk about dedication, huh?
My boss literally goes, are you definitely leaving, or can we talk about it? And I said, yes. I'm definitely leaving and we can talk about it. But I was unhappy. I was on a journey, and I was searching, and I was really good at my job in the corporate world, kind of aggressive and analytical and no nonsense. And I did well, but I didn't like amplifying that part of who I was. Just because we're good at something doesn't necessarily mean for me, it wasn't best in this life. Yeah. And I was unhappy. So for me, it was like this weird relief to be like, I'm going to quit my job because I'm going to follow these beings.
Yeah, but it's such the opposite, right? From left brain life to right brain life, so to speak. Because the analytical part, the corporate world, everything that entails that is so opposite of going with your intuition, with, everything that has to do with that. So I guess it's more becoming true to yourself. Would that be correct?
It was, well, I sometimes think there's a version of my life where I just did that and made a ton of money and was cutthroat and didn't necessarily have the best human relations, but maybe I fulfilled like another part of my being. And what I came to realize is it just didn't feel like my intention for this life.
Yeah.
I do think we have lifetimes where we work on things that are the oversoul of who we are really wants to learn and advance. And I was just like, this is not why I'm here this time.
No.
Like, it feels like shit. And I think that I'm here to work with the unseen world. And which, by the way, coming out of like grad school and hitting the workforce in New York and being in those roles, walking in and telling somebody, I really think that I talk to dead people, so I'm going to go ahead and go do that, is really hard, actually. And
Well, yeah.
scary. It's scary.
Yeah, because you're going to be judged, and those are the people that you have around you, right? People that are from that world. So, I mean, what are they going to say? At the end of the day, they're probably going to call you crazy, but it really doesn't matter, does it?
No, I think about this often, especially being in the space community now, or the UFO community and disclosure and programs, which I feel I was a part of. I think about sometimes at parties, people will pull me aside, like businessmen or very, executive level people, and say, by the way, I think I'm visited. And I'm like,
yeah,
you don't talk about it because of what's at stake for you. Do you know what I mean? These people are not talking publicly because of what's at stake for them.
Yeah.
Versus someone like me now, who this is my job. I can talk about it freely because nothing's at stake for me, but it doesn't mean that they're not having the experiences. There's just too much at stake to come forward publicly and discuss it.
Well, it's because they chose to stay in that life, and so they need to be careful with what they say. But that actually comes with that life, doesn't it? It's all about political correctness and all that. It's all about the fake world, because it's you kind of trade integrity, or not integrity, what do you call it, your true self. You have to trade it with whatever the corporate world wants, right?
Yeah, and I can't blame them. It's understandable. No. I feel for them. Yeah, I feel for them, because I'm like, and I want to talk about it. I'm like, okay, let's go over here and talk about this. I want to know everything. But I really feel for them because I've been there, and I know what it's like to have two realities that don't mesh, and you're experiencing both. And it's the most unnerving feeling.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine, because, I've been isolated from people in the first place, because, I mean, I didn't even choose for it. I literally had no choice the way I felt, because I couldn't live with it. And now clearly things are changing. So now I'm happy to be able to, be in the world now, and the way it is. Who knew that would actually happen? But, and but you actually chose for truth and for your pure self, and it takes courage. But I think if we go along a little bit longer, then that would be actually the natural thing to do.
Long term, yeah. I have to be careful too. I'm going to turn into the interviewer here, because I know I want to ask you a question about that.
Like, oh, you can.
Okay.
I mean, so we have a conversation. We don't have an interview.
Okay, good. Because, I have a Patreon show, and I'm very used to being the one who gets to ask all the questions. So sometimes I have to be like, okay, change roles for a second. Okay. So you had this big change, after your cats passed, where you learned things about yourself.
Yeah.
Are you talking openly about those?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what you
Actually,
learned?
yeah, I've been sharing
Yeah.
that
What
when
made you, what,
gone.
I was wondering, like, how did you realize it? What made you realize?
Well, I think there was nothing left. I was all of a sudden, it was like being naked, right? I didn't have that protection from, the safeguard of cats anymore around me, and everything fell away. And then you're naked and you didn't even know, there were these issues until they are. And so I felt all of a sudden like, oh my God, this is so much more than just my cats passing. This is about um me and the way I look at life, uh, and people and the world. And so that's what I needed to adjust to and needed to change. And I'm still busy with that in a sense, but it's definitely, wow, it's been hard. I think maybe that was the hardest part, but that was the beginning, the initial part where it was hard. It was only in the past weeks that I realized how much I missed them, because all the changes I had to go through myself personally with their loss was so much work that really, although I thought I went through the whole grieving process, I really didn't. I thought I did. But what I really went through was the whole change in my world in
Mm-hmm.
itself. And so, that was a long process. Well, relatively long, if we consider that it only happened in May, June. But, that's what I've been working on for all these months, is adjusting to the world and, what it's like actually to not have them anymore, and to, start living my life like a normal person. And so, but at the same time, it's that's now that it hit me the past weeks, the loss of them, the emptiness, the usual grief that people have. It's only that hit me the past weeks, and I thought that was what I had in the beginning, but no, no, no. What I really had in the beginning was I was going through that whole change. And so, it's not much. There was no choice in the matter, right? So
I was thinking about something you said, because for much of my life, my older sister has teased me for, autism is something that's only really become like public awareness in the past few years, I would say. It's been around for a lot longer, but it's really in the public eye.
yeah.
And there wasn't a spectrum. It was like, for a while, Asperger's or non-functional autism, and that was it. And my
And
sister
usually for boys, because women, all the many women, I think millions of women have been misdiagnosed, and they've
non-diagnosed, just non-diagnosed. Yeah.
yeah, or diagnosed with all other, like ADHD, anorexia. Actually, that's actually a big part of being an artist as well, is that they can often be seen as anorexic, but it has really nothing to do with anorexic. It's rather the stress of trying to function, because I had that too. People thought I was anorexic. I was really thin, but it's not like I didn't want to eat. I just had so much stress. I couldn't eat, really. So there's many misdiagnoses for women, especially
Yeah.
OCD, all that kind of stuff. But what it really is a symptom of being misdiagnosed.
And in fact, being on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was teased my whole life. Like my sister mainly, and then eventually her kids would be like, geez, Asperger's much?
Yeah.
And only since information has come into the public eye, I don't know if I'm technically autistic or on the spectrum or not, but I certainly know that reading about it has made me be like, yeah, okay, well, I do think that way. And I never knew that was different than
Yeah.
how the majority of people are thinking.
Yes.
And it was the same sense of relief.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I just think differently.
Exactly, because people say, oh, because it's a disease. And no, it's not a disease. You're just different.
It's
But
like a personality tendency to me.
exactly,
Yeah.
because I didn't get social cues, right? Always straightforward, saying what I think, and I don't see a problem in that. But apparently, society did, which then caused me to retreat. Because if I cannot be honest, I cannot be myself. Then what's the point of being out there, right? And that's what actually got me withdrawn from people, because I wanted to be on. And my mom said, you need to learn to lie a bit. No, but I don't want to lie, right? I don't see the logic in it. And the same with sarcasm. I don't read sarcasm often.
Mm-hmm.
Certain jokes go completely over my head. And I didn't know all that. I only knew this year that I was like full blown on the spectrum. But everything fell into place. And God, if we was finally like, oh, so I'm not crazy. Right?
Yeah. Just to extend that slightly for me, it would be like I was hurting people and I couldn't understand how or why.
Yes.
And I didn't mean to, and I didn't want to. So it can cause a social shyness because you're like, I don't want to hurt anyone,
Yeah.
and
People
I,
saying you're rude, you're arrogant, you're this and that, because those are the labels in society. Apparently, they
yeah,
they put on that. But what you really are is just without a filter. Because wouldn't we be like that if we would be telepathic?
you wouldn't be allowed to have it. You can't. There, exactly.
Right?
In some ways, well, I want to also say that I've noticed, because I work with other, mostly women now, but some men who have abilities that are working to enhance them. And I would say that it is not uncommon to have personality tendencies that might be labeled as on the spectrum
Yeah.
when you're super in tune.
Yeah.
Because all of that nicety and social correctness, it can be fluff that blocks everything.
Well, it's really, for me, it's very stressful, because it drains my energy, because I cannot be who I want to be. I cannot be me. And so, being able to be me, even if some people can be hurt, but what I say, many people say also, oh, you know what I like about when you do interviews and all that, you just ask all the questions other people don't ask. And I don't see at all what questions those are, because to me, they're all questions. They're all, something that I want to know. And I don't see the difference, what is rude or what is not. I literally don't see
Yeah,
it.
there's no delineation there. You're just asking what you're curious about. In
Yeah.
truth, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, but because I've been obviously out of society for all those years, well, at least 25 years, I literally am not socially polluted. Therefore, I don't even know the social cues,
Yeah.
because I stayed away from it. So, whatever. And I'm so glad we're in this time in the world, because it is accepted now. I can now be myself. And the few that actually do reject me, well, I mean, I don't care. I didn't care anyway. But at least there are people now that accept me. And not only, there are more people like me, right?
Yes. Yes. And more
Like,
people realizing that it's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're the new normal. That's what I want to say, right? Because we need to be genuine, and it's all about. I think judgment here is very important, right? It's I think we're learning not to judge, which is not easy, but at the same time, if we're all so diverse in our ways of thinking, and we would be able to just be ourselves without agendas, because many people think, oh, there's an agenda if you say something rude, right? Because
Yeah.
you want to, I don't know, mock somebody. I don't see the point in that. There's no logic to me at all.
Yeah, there are definitely very endearing and positive attributes in thinking certain ways that are not the norm. I think there are
Yeah.
very good things about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, this year, that's another thing that came with that. When losing the cats, somehow all people like me, I found people like me. And it was almost like divine timing. And I do believe it actually was exactly that, right?
Mhm.
Because nothing happens for nothing without reason. And so I think this was just the right time for all that to happen, and for me being out here in the world. And many with me, by the way, because I know so many women like me and that finally can actually be themselves, you know?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I saw Tony Rodriguez in the chat. Good to see you. And Mel, good to see you there. And UFO Mark, Discog. So you actually work with Tony Rodriguez. That's how I know you. And you are working with his book.
Yes.
And you also work with people that are traumatized, right?
Yes.
And so can you first tell me, because I saw it in the chat, somebody asked like what kind of beings were they? Yeah.
So that's I love that question, because I think that now I could describe what their physical attributes are. At the time it was voices, because I think that's what I was ready for.
Mm.
So my relationship to the beings started as sensing something was there, then hearing, then I saw them as colors.
Oh, wow.
And so this is evolving over years, by the way. So then
Yeah.
I would see them. I knew when I saw this fuchsia color and this circle that was my beings. And then as I got comfortable with that, it didn't bring up fear in me. It was like, okay, this is my circle of beings. Then I started to see the figures, the actual,
Wow.
they look like aliens. Like
Right.
they look like grays, which I know everybody thinks are bad, or not everyone, but they come with the stigma. In my experience, there are so many species of grays in the galaxy that
I
they
think
look.
grace is a bit a weird word because they're not per se gray, first of all.
No,
It's
they're
only
like,
they have a certain appearance, right? That is similar to.
they're not. They weren't even gray. The way I could best describe it is that it looks like the flesh of what you would anticipate a dead person looking like
Right.
kind of transparent. You can see the veins. It's this bluish greenish gray.
I can
Big
see now the
heads.
love for your cats.
Yeah.
He has a nude cat, which,
She reminds me. Yeah.
that is so interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so now that's how I see them when I communicate. But I think that if that day on the pier, 7 or 8 years ago, how old am I? So 7 years ago, that day on the pier, if I had seen gray, greenish gray alien beings telling me to leave my job, I would not have left my job. I would have checked myself into the psych ward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But first it started as a feeling, and then it started as the verbal guidance, and I got used to it, and I established a trust relationship, really. And then I feel as I evolved and I became more okay with ET life, with maybe that when I started to accept reincarnation and started to think, what if I was a different life before human?
You didn't before?
No, I didn't at all.
Really?
Really?
Oh my God. No wonder you had to. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't at all. And it all started with me having memories of what I thought was the Holocaust, because that was the only reference I had. And I remembered being around German speaking, and I remembered speaking German. And I remembered like looking like myself, though. I had this waking memory come through. And so I called this healer that I knew. This is before 29, by the way. This is a, in the years leading up to it, I'm so bad with chronological time, like remembering where things go. I have to write it all down. But, and I had told her, like, I have this memory of myself around German speaking people. And I had been to Germany 4 times for God knows what reason. Well, now I have my own suspicions, but
yeah.
And at one point I was there in Germany with a friend, and my friend was going to ask a woman a question, but she responded. And then I turned to my friend and I said, oh, she said at 10 a.m. over there. And my friend goes, she said that in German, but I knew it. I knew what, you know what I mean? Because I was zoned out. So anyways, I go to this healer and she says, it's probably past life. You probably in a past life were a German. And the only thing I knew of like German, it was the Holocaust. I was like, oh, maybe I was around for the Holocaust because there were soldiers and it wasn't pleasant. And
how about if, would that be like the same program where Tony was maybe?
Well, now that makes more sense because I was me. But at the time, she said to me, it's probably past life. And I go, I don't believe in past lives.
Oh,
and she goes, well, now, of course I do.
Well, yeah.
I talk to dead people.
You're a regression therapist.
Yeah. And medium. So I know that life carries on outside the body. Like it's undeniable to me now, but at the time I didn't believe in it. And when she said that to me, I was like, that's impossible. And she didn't know anything about the programs, or she might've been like, potentially your consciousness was taken and put into a program, but all she knew was past life. So taking that back to how the beings appeared to me, I think as I allowed myself to be safe with new beliefs, then their form, they actually became forms, and I saw them differently because I could handle it and I wasn't afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then did they, first of all, let me see. Do they have a name? Are they from a specific race or planet?
So I did ask the name, and it was a sound, like a feeling sound.
Right.
And so there are always 5, but I'm one of them. So when I meet, there's always 5 of us, but I'm one. So when I said, like, what do I call you? And it's embarrassing to even try, but imagine like, but you feel it too, like you feel it, you feel who they are. And I said, is it okay then if I just call you the 5?
Yeah.
And so that's all I call them. And I asked them, is this where I'm from? And they said, like, we're your community of origin, but this is not where you're from. So they said, you've had lives here, but where you're from, do you want to see? And I said, yes. And I was shot out 1.08 trillion light years away. And I saw myself as a blue star.
Wow.
Yeah. So I couldn't tell you their name. I saw the map and it was a whole other floating galaxy, other galaxy. So I think there's a lot of galaxies out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm from another galaxy as well.
Yeah. And I don't think it's hard to telepathically or physically.
Yeah.
So
wow, that's so fascinating. But is this the 5, like the council for 5 as well? There's a council of 5, I believe.
I've heard others now that I'm more in the community, I've heard others say their council, there's 12, there's 9. And I just didn't know at the time. I just said, can I call you the 5?
Wow.
But I understand why council or something like that, because we are always in a circle. It's like the most similar thing you could liken it to is going into a boardroom with a circular table and you sit around it, but you're 5, but you're 1.
Yeah, that's how I imagined it. So interesting.
So I understand why people say that, but I know it's not. If anybody else, well, I don't know. It could be.
Because they are like an entity.
Yeah.
All 5 of them, right?
It's much more hive feeling.
Yeah.
It's much more hive. Like you're a part of a bigger hive, but each one has its own beingness.
Right. Oh, wow. That's so amazing. Hi, Feisty Kitty. And I saw Mountain. Good to see you. So then, okay. But then now, did you ask them if the whole German thing came from maybe the space program?
I did ask about space programs, and the response was very strict and specific. Experimental programs, not space programs.
Right. Well, yeah, that makes sense. So, but is that where you know the German from?
I have only shudders of memories of being around German speaking people. And so I don't consider it a clear memory. So
It's
I'm not
so
sure.
it's so interesting that you said you were in Germany and then all of a sudden you were able to understand the language, because I speak 4 languages. But I do believe I've been in Italy in other lives as well. When I got there, I learned Italian like in no time. But there were also things I didn't learn, hadn't learned yet, but yet I was able to say them. And it was so surreal. I was able to understand certain language, even Catalan. I
Mm-hmm.
never learned Catalan. I didn't even know it was completely different from Spanish. And my friend is from Catalonia, and she was talking to her other friend, also from Catalonia, and I understood every word. And I was like, I never heard this language before, and I just know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
And it's so surreal. And I sometimes think that maybe those are memories seeping through from previous lives.
So it could
How else?
be. Well, we have to leave space for all of that.
Yeah.
Like also working as a medium, I sometimes like, is this even mine?
Yeah.
Is this for someone else? Is this past life? Is this consciousness
Yeah.
robbing? Is this uh, an image of something I've seen that I wasn't really watching? Did it flash across the screen and my peripherals so my brain picked it up, but my awareness didn't? And we have to leave space for all of that. And we have to be very analytical and thorough in what's going on and what's possible. So that's why I can't say for sure that I was in German programs anywhere.
No. But isn't it interesting though, because you say that all these things mixed together, it's almost like you've been tumbled into a big puzzle and you need to figure it out yourself. But slowly you start to distinguish one from the other.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I think this is part of the whole learning process too, that whole 5D and other realms in the first place, because how else can you make sense out of it? I knew fairly quickly as a young child already, first of all, we shouldn't have words, we should all be telepathic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to speak as if I was telepathic. So somebody can look in my mind, you will get the same words out of my mouth that you can see in my mind. So I always did that. Got me in a lot of trouble, but it doesn't matter. I still wanted to stay true to that. The same with reincarnation and previous life. I knew fairly early on that was a reality. I actually found it really hard to accept any other reality, to be honest. Now, where did I got that from? I don't know, but clearly it is in there. And, it's not like you can change my mind very quickly, even if you're a child, because I think as children, we're more open anyway to understand truth better.
Mm-hmm. I sometimes wonder what I would have believed if I didn't have a sort of religious family growing up. Like,
That
I don't know. I believed what I had been taught. So I don't, in reincarnation didn't happen. And even though the whole religion is based on somebody coming back from the dead as a spirit, but it just didn't, happen.
Do you think that the whole religion in itself is actually designed for us to be messed up with in our minds? Because if you think of yourself as a child, kind of intuitive what the world is like, what we are, who we are. But then religion throws this wrench in it, and all of a sudden your belief systems are being challenged and ridiculed even, right? And so in a sense I would say that religion literally is there to confuse us to begin with.
Yeah. Or so the fundamental teachings of the religion I was exposed to the most, Christianity, and actually reading the words and the teachings of Jesus Christ, I think they're phenomenal.
Well,
I
yeah,
think teaching people you can tap into a spirit energy. You can do what I
yeah,
do. I can perform miracles, love, and even Jesus kind of threw out all of the rules of being a Jew and said, you don't need to do that to be enlightened or awakened. It's great. But then I think that, as with all things, some human wants to be in power.
yeah.
And so they find a way to build and manipulate, not fully manipulate, but create things so that they stay in power.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear involving in religion, the effect of the concept of hell, for example.
Yeah.
But also it also depends which religion, because one is much more fearful than the other, right? I believe that Catholic is much more fear-based. But in any case, I do believe there's a lot of good messages. They're just scrambled up with the truth.
Right. And you can tell they've been intercepted by humans.
Yeah.
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 You said something else I thought was really important that I'm currently working on, especially like getting married, which is, if you have,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. But if you have tendencies towards telepathy or psychic abilities, towards a heightened form of communication, it's you must teach yourself to use more words. And I'm really working on that, having like a husband now where I'm like, oh, he doesn't know what I'm getting. There's so much more happening in our sensory system, especially if you work on expanding it.
Yeah.
And so it's really like a skill that must be acquired even to explain myself better. Cause I'm like, don't you just feel it? Can't you just
Yeah.
feel and see? And then I think men and women, biological, are a whole other creature. And I don't want to get into any male female
Yeah.
thing, because I love everyone and you can be what you want, and that's cool.
It's a good test on our judgments, right? So
Yeah.
because yeah, you have to go into it like nobody knows anything. And I've always done that, really, because I always think, if I don't say it, then how would people know? But then people say, oh, you're too blunt. Well, it's the only way how I can make it clear, because if I'm going to make these back roads and all to save somebody's feelings, what you really do is the opposite, because you can be clearer than clear. And many people always say, oh, you're way too direct. Well, that's because I want people with me direct, otherwise I don't understand them.
Same. Yeah.
I don't do gray areas, because they are open for interpretation, like a mountain of interpretation. I just want the clear truth, right?
Yeah.
And but I guess that's the same for marriage. So instead of actually make it a judgment call or whatever, or judgmental about judgments, just go in it like everything is a clean slate, like somebody just doesn't know stuff. And that goes both ways, by the way.
And doesn't intuit everything that I'm intuiting, so it must be put into words. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
it's big for me. It's like, I've even like watched my own old interviews and been like, you didn't explain anything, Jaci, because I was thinking it and I was transferring it, but it's something, I don't know what made me think of that, but it's when your sensory system is expanded or heightened, there's a necessity to use humanness more. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And communicate.
Yeah, it's the assumptions, right, that we have. And I never assume, because I usually don't understand people to begin with, so I have to ask, I have to be clear, I have to be questioning, clear, without any judgment. There's no judgment, but often that is being received a bit harsh, because they're like, oh, you cannot ask that, that's rude. And I'm like, why not? If I don't ask, I won't know, would I? And why do we need to all be secretive anyway? Because we're still human, all of us.
Correct.
So for me, that is a really weird concept that I still being now in the human world, which I know it sounds really weird, but I still want to stay true to myself in that sense. I just hope that people won't just assume that I'm coming from, I don't know, a rude standpoint, right? Because that's never the intention. It's all about intention, really, to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit more? Because then you met these beings and they told you, did they tell you what your mission is and what you are supposed to be doing?
Not in direct words, but that I was to trust these abilities or this extrasensory world that was happening, that it was going to be used to help people.
Right.
And that's really where it started. It was basically, do you want to help people or not?
Yeah.
And are you going to allow this to be real for you? And I, in that day, decided, yes, okay, I am and I will. So it really started as medium work, just having medium sessions.
Mm-mm.
Um, and then over time, encompassed a lot more.
It's so interesting in the past years how many people I've met that all of a sudden got this psychic bomb coming in and changed completely their lives. And, it's so clear to me that this is a period of time in a world where this had to happen anyway, right? And some people spontaneously all of a sudden get all these activation contacts with all sorts of beings and aliens just to help other people. I mean, that's not coincidence, obviously. And so I like that for you. It happened the same. Well, maybe a bit slower, because I do know people actually last year had still the tinfoil head. They would tell you you have a tinfoil head if you talk about aliens, and now they're all,
Yeah.
channeling, activating, talking light languages, stuff like that. It's insane. So it
Well,
becomes normal.
at that time, the only reference point I had for anything like that was angels, from what I'd been taught in my upbringing. And then I knew about the Akashic records, and I knew there were these masters of the Akash, the unseen.
Yeah.
And I thought that I had tapped into the masters of the Akash. I was like, oh my gosh, the masters came through. That's what I thought was going on at the time.
Wow.
So I thought I was going to help people with their spirits, who they are as spirits and what they've experienced, and then other spirits on the other side.
So then how did you, because you came from that rigid kind type of thinking, how did you manage to then trust it?
It was so accurate. Well, it was scary, and I did approach my acupuncturist at the time and told her, like, I don't know if I'm okay. This is what's happening. This is what I'm sensing. And then, down the line, she synced me up with a woman who really helped me learn about it.
Mm.
And she was like, just practice with people. And then when I was sitting down and having a session, it was so accurate. Like, I remember being shocked. Like,
Yeah.
when people would come through by name, or they would show me memories, like, you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't know what was possible in a session. And then I opened myself up to it, and these very specific, accurate things started coming through. And then you can't argue with it.
Right. So then did they come through you, or was it a message from the beings that actually, comes through as a message for them?
So very little of my work is from what I'll call the five.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it is from what I call the spirit world. Again, I'm giving human language to something that it doesn't quite fit, but we have to be able to talk about it. So the process of talking to the five is a lot of body work. It's a long process for me. If I go to them, sometimes they come to me and it's like, hey, like, I don't get to control that. But the process for me to get to them, it takes time. And I've asked why can't I? Because once I knew them and I felt them, by the way, it's an amazing feeling.
Mhm.
I missed it. So I would be like, why don't you let me connect with you more? Like, I want to be home. It feels like home. And they said to me, like, you can't go from this realm, this mode, this vibration to ours without the process, because it's going to blow your fuse. Like, you
Yeah.
literally have to prep yourself to be there.
Yeah.
So I only really go to them when I'm super stuck or trumped. And I'm
Right.
like, I don't know how to help this person or help myself. I really need guidance. And it's not because they wouldn't give me guidance on anything. It's just because it's such a process. So I think there are many things going on in the unseen world. The medium work in the spirit world, and the spirit work is existing in an unseen realm
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the same as the channel through which we can communicate with other currently living beings. Did
It's
I
sort of
explain
like
that okay?
you learn to walk on your own 2 feet in this realm of possibilities. And so you cannot always ask for help, because at the end of the day, you still need to trust it yourself as well,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
the way that I understand it from them is like, this is an ability that we had in that form. The communication, the not needing to see physical versus aphysical, it was all a network of information.
yeah,
And that I brought that into this humanness.
in a way, it's a bit like um, curing from amnesia,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's like there's a new muscle that you need to train, because and you, first of all, you didn't know you had it, and now that
Correct.
you know you had it, you need to find a way how to train it, right? Because that's literally what it is.
And to make it, it's like having amnesia for 20 years. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, 20 years ago, this is what was going on.
Yeah.
And it does, you have a hard time integrating it into your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is also something familiar to it, and that is what you hold on to, because is that is what you trust. It's that familiar thing. And so once you get to trust that, once you are confident with that, you actually start to train that muscle of you know remembrance, I would say, right?
There is something very important about getting okay with it before more
Yeah.
comes through.
Yeah.
In everything, and people working on memory recall and psychic abilities and connection to the unseen, you really have to work on the places in you that are blocking it
Yeah.
on a fear level or energetically or belief systems. And then the more you become okay with it, the more you can see.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've noticed this myself as well, becoming more intuitive, having the clear cognizant, but at the same time getting memories back from previous lives, and lives from millions of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, wait, am I crazy? And I'm like, no, no, because also they come spontaneously when I'm not even thinking about it. Right? It's when you try to think of it is when it's so natural. But when it just pops up in your head, you're like, wait, where did that come from? Right? That's usually where you can trust it. Tesseract is asking, what's your opinion on Akashic records? And does she tap in the collective mind?
My opinion on the Akashic records is, who am I to say?
Yeah.
Except that if the work that I've done through the Akashic records with a high integrity teacher or a guide, it's it's life changing, and it's accurate, and it's beautiful. I can only
And,
speak from my experience with it.
and he says, like, do you tap into the collective mind? But in a way, that's the same thing, isn't it?
Um, I think we can't not tap into the collective mind, because that's the nature of our existence, is that there's a oneness.
Yeah.
We're not and can never be separate from each other. But I would really want to make sure I understand what he means when he's saying collective mind.
Yeah.
I'm contextually answering what I think he's asking.
Yeah, I always visualize it like with this big spider web, how we're all connected and with like little highways. It's like a giant brain really with synapses going all over the place, and all the different experiences. You say, is it bad to erase our Akashic records? I don't think you can erase your Akashic records. It is. It just is.
Well, I've had a little bit of like, just saying like, I don't want to work on that in this, like if something comes up and I'm like, this is great. But I don't know if you can erase it or not, but I certainly think that there is a time and a place to turn it off for a bit
Well,
and be like,
yeah,
I've got enough going on here in this
yeah,
life.
but you cannot erase it. It's always there, right?
Again, like, I don't know, who am I to say? I think so. It would be really,
It's
that's
like a memory.
interesting.
You cannot erase you can erase a memory, but it's still there. The memory, it's still in the field, so to speak.
So this is a contemplation because we know that there's no linear time. It's all in this moment in a
Yeah.
way. I do think you can play with timelines and change them. So I think you can enter, I call it like a reverse quantum healing. I think you can re-enter through regression a past life and change it.
I think so, but at the end of the day, it's still there, whether you
But it's
want
there
to.
differently if you
Yeah,
change it.
yeah, okay. Well, you don't have to be part of it anymore, but it's still there. Just like, because that's what Akashic Records is. It's literally a record
Yeah.
of things.
I'm open to the idea. I would probably, if I had to answer right now, say I would encourage changing it rather than erasing.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah.
something there. There's something there for our oversoul or the essence of who we are to work with. But I need to think about it longer. I'm open to it.
Isn't it like as soon as you judge it, right? As soon as you judge it, it becomes a problem. But if it exists and you do not judge it, it's still there. It is, right? And that's okay. Actually, Tony says something. It's really incredible to me how many people relate to this information and who feel involved in so many hidden things. And from the establishment, crickets. Yes. So, well, obviously from the establishment, crickets, because they were the ones implementing it in the first place. But it doesn't mean that we all have this collective. We had a collective amnesia, but now that is being reversed clearly. That's what I see, at least. What's your opinion on that?
Which part of it?
Well, about today, if you look from now and 10 years ago, right? Well, 10 years ago, you said you were yourself still in, corporate world and in religion thoughts, etc. However, if you look now, today, I think I meet more people that are relating to all these topics or some of these topics than people that are not.
I feel like I live in a bubble, so I'm not sure.
Well, me too, but
yeah. I'm with you on that. I do think that there is something happening in what I'll call the collective where this is more accepted.
yeah,
It's more accepted than even 10 years ago.
I wonder, because if anything, I don't encounter any people that do not relate to anything of that. And maybe that's because we are now able to create our reality the way we want it and need it, if anything, because it wouldn't serve us to have only people around us that would not relate. But it used to be that way, though. For me, it used to be that way, but it's not anymore at all.
It's so hard to say looking back. I had people all along the way in my whole life nudging me towards this. So I'm not sure if it wasn't around or I wasn't aware. I don't know.
That's a very
You know
good,
what I mean?
it's a
Yeah.
chicken and egg thing, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so true. I do believe it has everything to do with the times. I think, but that's just an opinion, right? So I think before we were not able, because that so-called veil that people talk about,
Yeah.
it's that was, cloaking it. And I think that has been unveiled, so to speak. Mel is asking, can she explain the memory recall process she developed with Tony? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Um, well, there's a course online because I'm not going to be able to get through it all because the course takes about 5.5 hours, I think. But so let me give a little bit of background. I reached out to Tony after seeing a Gaia episode of his where something clicked. And it was one of those moments where I turned the TV off, I grabbed my chest, and I wept on the floor because I was like, oh my God, this would make sense. Nothing else was making sense, but this would make sense. And so then I approached Tony like a desperate lunatic, honestly. I reached out to him and I was just like, and
like a little stalker.
Just like, you have to help me. I'm credible. All the stupid shit you say. I have my master's degree, like, and it was so, and Tony responded. I always joke about this. He goes, first of all, hello, nice to meet you. And I was like, oh my God, I had no manners. I'm so desperate for help. And then Tony gave me these really good tips. He told me to make a timeline. He told me to write down everything weird in my life.
Yeah.
And I wrote him back and I think I said, I keep sitting down to try and I'm blocked. Like I just fall asleep or I can't do it. And he goes, that's a parting gift. And, and so then I got really gritty about it and I was like, I'm doing this. Anyways, I did what he recommended. And I had that moment where I was like, oh, there is an order. There are some keys here. This is something that's, it just for the first time ever with the I was a medium, so I think a lot was strange, but with the off planet stuff, I started to feel like I wasn't crazy about it. And so then I came back to Tony and I said, this can help people. Because I had interviewed Tony and then someone from my gym said, I was talking about the guy you interviewed and my coworker, I think's colleague's face went white. And he said, my brother is homeless on the streets of California and he claims the same thing happened to him. And we just thought he went crazy. And I went back to Tony and I said, we have to help people. You have to help people. No one should be going crazy over this. No one should be losing what they could do with the remainder of their human life over this. And so we actually sat down for many weekends and formulated these are the best things to do if you think this is happening, and get some memories back and make sense of it. And then we put it into this, it might be 4-hour course. I don't remember, and then it's something that you would do over time. The exercises recommended are going to take you time. And then we put it out for people. And Tony told me hundreds, if not thousands of people had contacted him. But after putting it out, it's unreal how many people I think this is happening to or are experiencing this. I don't know if I answered the question, but it's a series of protocols and exercises. If you suspect that you were involved or if you have strange memory, I'm saying strange because they're probably not, but they're strange versus what we see in the normal reality. Normal. Trying to be careful with my language. And it's to help you really either remember more and integrate what you've already remembered. I hope that answered the question.
I never thought about these people that are homeless and are being considered crazy by their family. And they did indeed. Well, they didn't go crazy, but they did go towards a direction they felt compelled to go. And I never thought of that part
It'll
of.
like if you get fluid, clear waking memories. Do you allow swearing?
Yeah.
It'll really fuck you up.
Yeah.
Like bad.
Yeah.
And we need to be there for each other, and we need to be talking about this. We have to.
I'm just thinking, like, from my own point of view, when I was, well, I didn't remember the first 7 years of my life. I didn't understand why. It was just like I was just dropped on the earth like that, right? It was like that. It felt like that. I couldn't relate to people. I couldn't relate to my own peers, and so eventually I just accepted what was. I didn't try to, you know, be like them because I didn't want to. Um, However, it did cause me obviously to completely isolate from society. I didn't go homeless and all that, but in a way, it's a same extreme change for normal society, so to speak. Um, but I never thought about it like from that perspective that there is people um, that is sensitive to what other people say and their families and being, because it depends how you grow up. I never had that. I was like, well, I just don't care. I'm just going to live my life anyway without all those people around me. I don't care how they judge me, whatever. I didn't even talk to them about it. I just stayed alone with it. But other people do feel the need to, completely, I don't know, mm, isolate themselves in a negative way where they lose everything. Well, maybe because in some situations you do need your family and friends in order to survive.
Or
Uh,
therapy, like, and you can liken it to like most of the time you're going to remember stuff that's embarrassing, degrading,
yeah,
shameful, painful types of, torment and, just being forced to do stuff. And so it's a form of post-traumatic stress disorder that you need help with
yeah,
because, I've done past life regressions. I've had them done. They're very effective,
yeah,
but
me
I
too.
feel a little bit disassociated, like I'm observing that person. Like I'm her, but
That's
it
why
doesn't feel so
I did
personal.
that's why I did BQH, which is like QHAC, is a bit different because you become that person and then you embody it during the session. While when you do regression, I did both. When you do regression, you look at it from the third person. You look at that different life of the person that you were. While when you do BQH, which
You
I
and
which is beyond quantum healing,
yeah,
or yeah, you actually become the person in the session. You literally are embodied by it, and that is a whole different way
that
of,
makes sense to me because I do get a lot of people booking sessions with me post QHHT or
yeah,
BHT because they need to
BQH.
integrate. They need help integrating.
Yeah,
And so
that's what
imagine,
BQH does and QHHC, because you literally feel who you were. I remember my first QHHC I did. I was one of the first humans on the earth, like cave man. And we always have this picture of cave people, like very primitive, they're a bit dumb and all that. No, we actually were telepathic. That's why we didn't speak in the first place. I knew already my son and my husband were killed due to telepathy before I could see them. And so that's when it hit me, and I'm like, oh my. But when you go in the session, I had to look down in order to see what I looked like. And I'm like, oh my God, I have hardly any clothes on. I'm really looking dirty. And there's no mirror. So I didn't know what my face looked like because, you don't have this reflection. But I did know I was a woman. I was a cave woman. We lived in a cave system. And yeah, and my husband and son were killed there. But it didn't feel the same as it would feel now when somebody dies. It was like very natural, like, okay, they got caught, but by the predators, but it is what it is. They went to the beyond, and of course you're sad, but at the same time it's a completely different concept. And that I talked to Peter Slattery, and he was talking about how the reptilian brain was inserted later. And that's when I realized we didn't have the fight flight concept yet at the time. So yes, you are being hunted or you are the hunter, but you just accept what is. There is no fight flight response, so to speak. And so when he said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know for certain that the reptilian brain was inserted later. And so I talked to him about that, and I said, I'm sure we didn't have the fight flight response at all before that. The whole fear concept came later in our evolution. But anyway, so that's how I felt that life, as embodied that life. Well, when doing regression, you just, and I've done regression, and you see the life, but it just, I could see what I looked like. I was a guy. I was like actually quite gorgeous, to be honest, in the Roman Empire times and all that. And I was like, but it's a bit surreal. It's different.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about, I've experienced both, where you embody versus where you observe. And in both, however, though, I felt like I went in with my higher self.
Yeah.
And so there was a level of wisdom that I brought in that made it not so personal and intense. And what I want to compare that to is then memory recall, if you're in a space program, is like coming home from a night where you were blacked out, or waking up after a blackout, and then that day remembering what the fuck you did, and it's awful.
Yeah.
And it's you.
Yeah.
And so there's like this it messes it can really mess you up.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to add like why it's so important that this community talks and that we help each other, and that there are resources available for people who are working with it. Because even, I did work with the regressionist on some of my memories, and even visiting them through regression versus driving in my car and it hitting, the level of shock was completely different.
Yeah.
So
it's like a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
I remember having that paradigm shift when waking up to the whole alien stuff. I literally have panic attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because right then and there, it's true. But at the same time, you need to integrate it in your belief system. It's really hard. And I've been there. It's been like 15 years ago or so when I got there. But I see more people had that experience as well. But then if you realize you actually were in these programs, but that's like 20 times worse.
It's like, some people had very mundane experiences, really, where they're just like not so bad. Some people remember being combat soldiers. Some people remember being a sex slave. It really just depends on what you were in, what program you were in. I think accepting that happened is a big hurdle first.
I think that's the key point, right?
Yeah.
Actually, Mel is saying, how does the memory recall course differ from doing hypnosis?
So I want to be careful. I do have opinions about hypnosis, and I don't want to share them. No. There's a woman, Juliet, her last name has escaped me. If I remember, I'll tell you, but she talks about doing she focuses on implant removal. but also strengthening memories, but she does it in a sovereign state, meaning you're not changing the brainwave that you're in. There's delta, gamma, theta,
Right.
and in different brainwave states, you tap into a different area of the brain. She does it in a waking state, which she calls a sovereign state. And
Is that
I
with,
liked.
sorry, is that with tapping?
No, it's through a sort of guided meditation.
Oh,
So
but that
you're
is,
relaxed.
isn't that the alpha state as well? Or the
Yeah,
beta?
but I'm not good at this. I don't know which state it is, but
Yeah,
it's not, you're not leaving your waking state.
right,
And the intention is to calm yourself enough to just allow it to happen.
right,
So I would say that the memory recall course focuses on being in your standard waking state, brain place, until you get enough of an anchor memory to then take that into altered brain states,
right,
meaning regression, meaning meditation. And meditation is encouraged, but it's to take that one anchor memory that you have into a meditation and see if you can expand it and remember more.
right,
But it's on your own, and it's predominantly in the waking brainwave state, whatever one that is. I don't remember.
right. That's the God. Now I'm confused as well. I just did
Yeah.
like the BQH course where you learn them all, and I always mix them up. But
Same.
yeah, the theta state is where you are in the hypnotic kind of state, but actually you can actually reach that as well in a meditative state. So
You can.
um, I guess it's all, I find it quite confusing because even hypnosis is not really hypnosis, because people immediately think of, oh, you have no control anymore. You always have control, really, right?
Yeah, even I would say that yes, you're always consenting and deciding.
Yeah,
At least I do believe there are levels of hypnosis where you're not.
yeah,
But
yeah, but
yeah.
yeah, there are different hypnosis techniques indeed, but I've never experienced one where I didn't have control, nor would I want any other, to be honest,
I
because
had a past life regression where I remembered fucking nothing. I came out of it like it was wild. And then you
oh
listen to it and you're like, what the shit?
yeah, no, I did have that with the QHC, but that was my first one where I wasn't that like in tune yet with my higher self. So my higher self came in, but I had to listen to the audio in order to know what my higher self said.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is weird. That is weird. That's especially when you never experienced the BQH or QHHC, or that's and you're not much in tune with your higher self yet. Then that is usually what you experience. However, it's still you,
Yeah. Agreed.
right?
Well, I've heard of other beings coming into those sessions as well, but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah,
They identify themselves. So
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I see with the BQH now as well. I do now having clients, and yeah, they definitely come in spontaneous,
Mhm.
and all sorts of beings. Actually, it's so fascinating to do, to be honest.
Yeah. There's a
I
lot
love
in the
love love doing
unseen.
it. Yeah, it's but do you have that with regression as well?
Have which part?
Well, that you have these guides coming in or beings coming in.
You mean if I'm practicing regression with someone?
Yeah.
I really only focus on higher self.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that
Or
is
inner wisdom, inner guidance. I don't do a very deep level of regression work.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not that it is similar to BQH, then, to the beyond quantum healing. It's rather more the quantum healing than it is the traditional hypnosis regression therapy.
Yeah. I have done it. It is effective, but it's like this knowingness that that's not my line.
Yeah.
That's not my line of work in this life. And I do there are instances where it is the perfect, highest and best thing to do. And I always tell people, you just have to follow your own guidance. If you're called to QHHT, do it. If you're called to guided meditation, do it. If it doesn't speak to you, trust it. You have to listen to your own wisdom about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and indeed, and Mel says the reason I did hypnosis was because I wanted to go into my unconscious mind, because that's literally what we constantly do. We're going in the unconscious. I had a conscious memory, and I was concerned about filling in the gaps incorrectly, and that's exactly what this is for. So, because that's what we do when we go with our thinking mind, our wakened state. We tend to go unconscious, weirdly enough, because we're not used to be in our consciousness. Actually, that's what we're learning now, is to make it normal to be in our conscious state. But we've been in our unconscious state is the norm, kind of, right? And it's interesting to see that, because, yeah, that's where we're actually heading. It's people getting into their conscious state, where there's also no judgment.
I get so turned around, conscious, unconscious. I think about it in, where am I taking my awareness? And I'm taking my awareness into a deeper part of my brain, maybe. That
the conscious is the awareness, the unconscious, the unawareness. So we were talking about animals earlier. So they are always in a conscious state. They're always living in the now. It's rather being in the now presence constantly. That's where we're pretty much should be all the time, but we're only learning that now because we're always thinking ahead or in the past. We're never here.
In the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Right? So many spiritual teachings bring you into the moment, because that's where all of the abilities lie. You have to be in the present moment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. And actually, I had a great interview last week with Christian Sundberg, where he remembered his past life and how he came into this life. And we were talking about that. And it was so mind-blowing because, he just remembered, he reminded me that at this moment I was being unconscious. And I was like, oh my God, it's so simple, right? But you just forget, conscious mind tries to put together a puzzle, and how do you know you are not filling in the gaps incorrectly? Okay, so I get what you're saying, Mel. So even if you're going under, she sometimes doesn't trust what she gets through. I wonder if that can be because some people are afraid that you get the wrong messengers. But how do you know how to trust it? What is real?
Is any of this real?
Good point.
It's a great question. I think specific for Mel is ask, do I trust my guide? Do I trust the guide taking me through this? Start there. Then, to me, this is all speculation. All of it. All parts of being human are speculation. So, meaning, this is going to get really complex.
Yeah.
I have memories of my childhood. They happen, but did they? Could I prove it? Could I go back into that material space and prove it? Or could it be a simulation that I'm experiencing that I think was real because it's so augmented? It's augmented so well. Like I don't want to mess people up, but you have to leave space for all of that. And so the question that I go to is, why do I want to work this out? And let that be the stronger guide. Like, maybe it's causing anxiety. Maybe it's there's a resolve that needs to come from it. But I would go first to, why do I want to work this out? And are there ways that I can get that result without proving to myself or creating this such a deep need to make sure it's real, because arguably we don't know that any of this is real. So you just do your best, number one. And the fact that you're searching is gorgeous. I have to say that, because so many people don't. But like,
well, a lot is also has to do with confidence, with our own confidence, because just like you, when you said you were on that pier and you got that message, right? You could also have said, well, you know, if you were not very confident with yourself, you could have said, oh my God, I'm going completely nuts. And what the hell is this? And reject it, right? So it's all about how.
I got to pause there though and say, in another, sorry, there's a lag and I talked over you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to pause there and say, flip side of the same coin, someone walking by would have looked and been like, who the fuck are you talking to? And I would have said, there was these beings. And they'd be like, I don't see them. They're not real. Right. Who's right? You know, like, who's right? How could you ever prove that?
Yeah.
Because we live in an observer-based reality where the present moment is intangible. And we think we're having all of these experiences, but we really can't prove it, because time is current only.
Yeah.
And that'll like melt your dome if you think about it for too long.
That's so true. Well, also, it's because we also create our reality. So I guess if you think about that, you know, and this is going on a tangent here, but the moment that you don't even trust it, maybe it's because you were not supposed to trust it, because it had another lesson within there, right? And like you said, what you experienced as a child, actually, that caused me some trauma, because as a child, I saw an accident happen, and this child fell, and all I saw was blood. In my memory, the whole head was open. That was my memory. That was my trauma. And I had to go through it. I was in 2012 in a clinic in rehab, and I had EMDR because of this, right? So we have EMDR, and I had to relive that moment. And all of a sudden, I was able to see clear what actually happened. And it was me, my child mind picked up like this child had a gap. The half the brain was gone. But what really was true was that because there was so much blood, it was mashed in the hair, which I, as a child, interpreted as being half the head was gone, right? And so this is what I had in my mind in far into adulthood, like past 40 years old. I still had that in mind. But once I did this EMDR, all of a sudden I was able to see it from above, what really happened. It's really weird how EMDR worked. It's with the eyes. And but when I then saw what really happened, I was like, oh, my whole life I've been so traumatized by that scene, just because me as a child picked it up different, because I couldn't know any different, right? So I guess in a way, this is true as well for the unknown that we get to experience now, right? Like you having these beings. It's what you don't know, you have to learn to know and to trust, right?
And to say these are a part of my reality. And trust me, there are lots of people that think that I'm insane and it's not real. And I'm like, but it is for me. It's a part of my reality. So it's real to me. And I often tell people, if you go through a regression and you don't, you know, you're questioning it, if it's real, well, just ask yourself, why would my brain produce this then? There must be something there for me, and be okay with that. Be okay with a little bit of the unknown and speculate. That's why I was saying, like, it's all a speculation, really, because we know very little for sure.
Well, this is actually very interesting, you said, because when the doubt comes in, when you are using your thinking mind again, usually that's when you should not trust the thinking mind, because it's the thinking mind that actually puts us out for a loop, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can for sure.
Right?
I hope we're helping, Mel, though. I can't see the chat because it causes that echo, so I don't know if I'm fully answering.
Well, Tony is helping out there
Okay,
too.
good. Thanks, Tony.
Good to see you, Ursula, as well. Anyway, I really love this conversation because it's really deep. It can be very complex, but at the same time, I just know everybody understands what we're talking about, which a few years ago wasn't even fathomable, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I love it. So, but anyway, I've got her website in the description for people that want to know more. They can find it on her website and learn a lot about it. If there's anybody listening here that actually thinks, oh, I have certain memories, whatever, I need to get back, then, contact her because, I do believe there's a lot of people struggling at the moment. Just like you said with the homeless person, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many people that are still lost, but yeah, there is hope now, right?
Yeah. And there's people who can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and
Thank you for having me.
yeah, and sharing this information. I hope I'm gonna have you back again together with Tony, actually,
That
because
would be fun.
yeah, his book is coming out soon. We can talk about that. It's going to be in the new year. And thank you so much. Is there anything you want to share with the public, where they can find you, what you're doing?
Just a thank you to you, and thank you for anyone tuning in. And if you're tuning in, it's because you have a certain vibration that's really lovely to be a part of. So I feel like I got to share in that. My website, I'm going to be at some upcoming conferences, the UFO conference in Vegas in March, Secret Space Program
Oh, with the
conference.
Journey to Truth is there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then theirs is in May. And I just want people to get into the community if it's going to help them, and know that there are a lot more resources now than there used to be, and just know that things are available, and I would love to help in any way that I can.
Well, thank you. I mean, we need people like you and Tony and everybody out there that can help because, it's necessary and we're in new times now. So thank you all for being here. Also, I want to say that this was actually my last interview of the year. I'm probably going to be live the New Year's Eve. European time, so for you guys it will be later, but just to do a little um, how do you say that, overview of the past year. Not that there's much pleasant stuff to share, but either way, just wanted to do a little closure of this year. And so I hope you're all going to be there. And I hope you're going to be back soon. And thank you all for being here. And I hope you all have a good one. Peace out, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.